But yes, the 12-team playoff. And then they'll reevaluate. Same story. They have until December 1st under the bylaws as to whether it's going to be 12's the minimum. And remember, if Notre Dame is ranked in the top 12, they get an automatic bid. And that's part of the arrangement and agreement. So they will get an automatic bid. But it's really Greg Sankey of the SEC and Tony Petitti of the Big Ten that have to essentially come to an agreement on this, because under the new arrangement that they have the majority of the votes. They have the two of them equal better than 50%. Well, Sankey was fine with 16, and a year ago it sounded like they were okay with the idea of automatic qualifiers, 4 for the SEC and 4 for the Big Ten. And then, then after that, 2 each for the ACC and the Big 12 to get eventually, then with at-larges to get to 16. But then when the coaches met last year for the SEC, they said, no, we want to see 5 plus 11. Okay. And that's where they've been stuck ever since. All right. We now have Nate Bauer through the miracle of engineering. Sir, welcome. Appreciate it. It is not a snow day, so you do not have the kids all day.
That is exactly right. You know the drill.
Yes.
But it's still cold.
Oh, it's very cold. Very cold. Okay. Well, I'll quickly just at least start with the game last night in Rec Hall. I mean, the atmosphere was great and so forth. In the first 9 minutes, Penn State plays well. And then as soon as something doesn't go right, suddenly things cave in for them. Nate, a concern I had about this team back in July, so this is even before I knew the schedule, was with so many freshmen playing. I thought right around the last week of January, the first week of February, it's not a myth, it's a fact. When you play that many minutes, you hit the wall. And I feel like this week it felt like they were hitting a wall.
Yeah. I think it's certainly a physical wall. I think it is a mental wall.
Yes, it is.
I really think that they don't know who to turn to, right? When things go a little amiss in the course of a game, there's just not anybody who can necessarily be that steadying presence. And I'm not even saying that necessarily last year's guys were that, right? I think you had a little bit of that out of Puff Johnson, but once he got hurt, you saw some of the ramifications of that. And so, certainly Josh Reed he had a pretty good game last night, a decent game last night. Freddie has kind of his own ups and downs, right? I mean, inconsistency has been one of his things through his career at Penn State. But other than those two guys, you're just looking at a roster that has not played college basketball. Right? And so when that is the makeup of 95% of your roster, that creates challenges. And I did think that, I'm not sure if you heard Mike in the post game, but they just have this original sin of not being able to defend well.
Right. And
because they don't have really the horses or the know-how or, there's no rim protection. Like when you combine all of those things and create the defensive challenges that they have, I actually thought that they defended the perimeter a little bit better last night than they had been. They were better contested shots, at least in the first half. And Wisconsin just knocked them down anyway.
Right. And sometimes that happens.
So you had this situation where Wisconsin goes on a 13-0 run, and I think Josh had a couple of points there. He had maybe a 3 and a trip to the free throw line, but it was a 13-0 Wisconsin run, sandwiched around a 14-0 run on the backside of it. And so, at 27-0 in that time frame, of I don't know, 8 minutes of basketball, you can't survive like that. And though they played a little bit better in the second half, it was so uncompetitive by that point.
Right.
There was just nothing they could do.
That's exactly right. The other part is this: in the changeover of roster, and then with all the youth coming in, Yannick ends up going to the NBA. And I looked at Nolan Winter last night, and Nolan Winter, when he comes into the Wisconsin program, gets behind Stephen Crowell and behind Wall. And for 2 years, he can play 7 to 12, maybe 15 minutes in a game, be a contributor, but not expected to win the game for you. I've got Crowell and I've got Wall. Now he gets to be a junior. He ascends to that spot, and it's his baby. Ivan Juric didn't have that luxury because good for Yannick, awesome for him, and really good for Penn State. He is a first-round pick in the NBA draft, but it now means Juric has to play 25 to 35 minutes a game, which at this point is a struggle for him. How about that?
Yeah. No, I look, and I've been saying it, and I'm not sure that it's that I've gotten pushback on it. Like, very obviously, Yannick was not expected to go to the NBA.
Right.
That's right. That was not his trajectory, was that they would have him after a transfer from Northern Illinois to Penn State and in 1 year be able to turn him into a first-round draft pick. Is that and you just said it. Is it a good thing for the program? Yeah, of course. I mean, what an incredible dictator or sign of progress and development. I mean, it's just incredible what Brent Scott was able to do, and obviously Yannick's hard work to be able to turn into that kind of a player after just a year. Right. But on the backside of it, it's a combination of factors of being incredibly unlucky in terms of program development and being able to bridge last year to this year. Yannick would have been a huge piece of this team. And then on top of it, could they have convinced him with a monster early offer, right after the season, to say, hey, we know that the NBA is there, give it another year, we've got $2.15 million waiting for you, right? Would he have closed that window? I don't know. But what I do know is other programs that were in the market for bigs this offseason made a pitch for them to stay with very competitive NIL offers and kept a lot of them, right? Which in turn created the market for him in the NBA. So you have all of these dynamics at work, but end of the day, when you see this team this season and some of the situations that they've gotten themselves into over the last couple of games, obviously Maryland and Wisconsin now being back-to-back blowouts and really uncompetitive blowouts. You gotta, like, revisionist history, I'm not sure what the word is, but if Yannick's there, it probably looks a little bit different. Probably looks a lot different. And so that, but that's just one of those things that they have to deal with, and they just got to keep plowing ahead.
Right, exactly. And I'm not sitting here making excuses. I'm just using my experience to tell everybody what I've seen over my career of guys hitting the wall, about development of players and so forth. It's not an excuse. I'm just explaining through experience what I'm seeing. How much credit do you have to give to Derek Hoosier, along with Matt Campbell, that they were able in a 14 to 16-day period, and even a little bit before that because of the existing players, to put all those contracts together in a condensed period of time? Because that's the part nobody talks about.
Yeah, I mean, this is college football today, and I think certainly they know that. They're well aware of it. It helps when you've got, I'm not going to call it a discount, but certainly having those pre-existing relationships. I think the number is 23. You can correct me on that. Iowa State players that ended up transferring, and then another, 11, 12 Iowa State commitments.
Right.
So that helps, right? That's a huge piece of
smart.
That is
it's
those
smart.
guys committed to a head coach who changed jobs, right? And when the opportunity arrived for them to follow him, this is kind of classically college football program culture guy, right? That's what Matt Campbell is. So yeah, they moved quickly to evaluate the needs of the roster in terms of players retained from last year. I've got 52 is my number.
Yes.
Guys that were on the roster last season that carried over to this season.
Yep.
Among them, and I do think that this is a kind of an important caveat, 15-ish who would be who we would think traditionally of as walk-ons, right? In the NIL era, that's kind of been destroyed a little bit, but would qualify in that designation. So 52 guys that carried over from last year to this year. They are currently at 40 guys in through the portal. And then what's really been interesting for me over the last week-ish is the increase of class of 2026 guys.
Right.
So they went from 10 class of 20, right? They immediately tapped into those Iowa State guys, but since have expanded the net, right, to be able to establish for themselves a true freshman class, right? So that you're not going through this process with a gap in the roster distribution. They will have freshmen. They will have guys that they can develop, in the first year on campus.
I've often talked about collective bargaining, and that I think, to me personally, they're going to have to get there. That's just an opinion.
Yep.
Part of collective bargaining is when you put an agreement together. What do they do in Major League Baseball, the NFL, NBA, NHL? We know what everybody's contracts are. And I think it has to get to the point where they start disclosing what the contracts are, at least on the rev share part of it, because we're seeing now with everybody going to court to change things up, including the Mensa kid, the quarterback from Duke. I mean, they're in court right now, and nobody, everybody's guessing what his deal is. I think they should be putting out eventually, and you can't do it until you have collective bargaining; it's agreed upon. But we should know what the contracts are.
Yeah, it's a huge hurdle to understanding the game that I just don't think gets nearly enough attention. Indiana just won a national championship, and incredibly, right? I mean, you've been around and know intimately the history of that program and what it has been in the Big Ten. I've got 21 years in this, and I've got a pretty good idea, right? How futile they have been over those years. Yeah. Curt Cignetti comes out, and there's a couple of storylines, right? One is, they've got this really old team, and they do. They do. They played a lot of upperclassmen that they obtained mostly through the transfer portal. But then the second one is this argument of, but they spent a lot. And Curt Cignetti saying, no, we didn't. And the reality being, nobody knows.
That's exactly right. We don't know.
Nobody knows. Penn State, right? And the way that Penn State fans consume, and this is a constant conversation at our website, Blue White Illustrated, and on our message boards is, all right, we've got a pretty good idea of what Penn State spent on its roster last season, and I've got it in the low 20s. There is a line of thinking that the low 20s were toward the top in all of college football this past season. There's another line of thinking that says, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. And the impossibility of it is not whether or not we can get a grasp on what Penn State spent. It's no one's telling the truth about what they spend, right? So you've got this $20.5 million cap, or supposed $20.5 million cap. People are circumventing it all over the place because, of course, they are. They can do that, right? There are ways. It's just laundering money. So you've got all of this stuff that's going on, where in Major League Baseball, yes, they don't have a salary cap, but you still know what the payroll is of every single team in Major League Baseball. There is a salary cap in football and basketball. You know, and there's luxury taxes and all of those different mechanisms to try to create a level playing field, or an even like a clearer picture of what the landscape looks like. That does not exist in college football. And so because of it, you've just got, there's no consistency. There's no consistency in what the understanding of individual player deals are, nor of overall team roster spend.
Yeah, and to me, it's the rev share part that you should be allowed to disclose. Now, you know, hi, I'm Nate Bauer for Adidas. That to me, like, we don't know how much money Patrick Mahomes makes from State Farm, right? That's his own personal business. I have no issue with that. But the rev share part, the fans should know, and everybody should know, and the competition should know how much you're paying your quarterback, how much you're paying your point guard, how much, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. I do think there's just this strange dynamic where in college football, your relationships with State Farm, right? Whoever those businesses are that have tight relationships with these individual programs, it's not about business sense. Right? It's a totally different equation from Patrick Mahomes is going to deliver us this amount of social media exposure and traditional broadcast media exposure, right? Like there are formulas to figure out a dollar amount to attach to that for Patrick Mahomes. They're not figuring, oh, this is what he's worth to the Kansas City Chiefs. That's not of State Farm's concern.
That's right.
Their concern is, hey, does it make sense for us to bring this guy on and be our sponsor and be our spokesperson? And here is what that's worth. In college football, it is, hey, West Shore Homes, and I'm just using them for instance, right? West Shore Homes is a big Penn State football fan. Right? PJ Worthen wants Penn State to have a really good quarterback. It doesn't matter what the value is to West Shore Homes of having Drew Aller as a spokesperson for West Shore Homes. It's irrelevant. The only equation is how much of a return can you get in terms of wins from that position. So I just like, yes, the 20.5 and the rev share component that would be part of the picture, but it's not the whole picture. And until it's the whole picture, everybody's just going to be guessing and running rampant with hazy ideas, right? Hazy ideas of what everybody's value is and what everybody is actually spending.
Larry Ellison of Oracle and Bryce Underwood. All right, that's a prime example right there. Yeah, we want a quarterback.
Totally.
So we got a quarterback. Always a pleasure, especially when you are surrounded for the moment by peace and tranquility.